All right, so now it's time to talk about CSS. All right, so I'm going to talk about inline CSS in particular, but basically the idea is that CSS stands for Cascade Style Sheets. Basically what it will do is it will allow you to select different HTML elements and apply design to it. It'll allow you to change the way that it looks. So for the most part, what you're going to notice is that HTML is meant to be the content of your site. It's how you define what text is in there, right? Through your H1s and your P elements and things like that. It's also obviously how you do your links. And it's also the structure. It's also how you put images in, right? Or import, iframes and other things like that. But it's the stuff that's in your site, but it's bare bones and it's not necessarily good looking. The CSS is the formatting and design of the site. So that's how you choose the color or the size of the words, the type of fonts that you choose, the colors of things, underlines, overlines, things like that. It's what's going to make the site look better. Now you're not going to be able to necessarily do that right now, but you can incorporate at least a little bit of it with it. Okay, so the way that it works is that it imposes a box model. So the idea is that for each HTML element, it makes an imaginary box around it, and then you can affect this box in different ways. You can say the stuff that's in the box, I want it to look a certain way. The outside of the box, I want it to look a certain way. The space between the stuff that's in the box and the outside of the box, I can choose. The space between this box and the next box, I can choose. But basically, that's how you control it. So here, if you look, so I just put a box around each element, and you can see this H1, right? And then there's a paragraph and another paragraph. But then even here, you can see this paragraph has an emphasis tag on here and a strong tag on here, and you can tell that it actually put a box around those as well. So it's every HTML element, and this entire thing is inside of a div, which we'll discuss later, and so that's all in one big box. So that's how it works. Now it can be applied basically in three ways. You can do an external CSS document, an internal, or inline. So external, what it means is that you have, just like in here, where we have this, an HTML document, what you would do is you have another document that you make another folder in, and it's .css, okay, and you link it to your site. Oops, not there. Which one is it? This one. And you link it to your site. So you would link it at the top inside of the head, right here, and then this would be inside of that. Actually, no, so not this one. But then you would have something, a separate sheet, just a whole new. You'd have a whole new file that you would just say like H1, and then you would say like color, green, kind of a thing. Okay, and this would be called .css. It'd be styles.css. Okay, but that's basically how an external one works. We're not going to do that yet. We'll do that later. An internal embedded one is sort of similar, where what you'll do is inside of the head you'll write style type, and then you'll put all of your CSS rules inside there, all of your formatting. So it looks something like this. I'm just going to copy this. You would copy that, and inside of the head, after, let me do an index here, after this you would have basically something in here, okay, and then this would affect these elements. So even here, watch, I'll save this and you'll see how it looks different. Let's go back to the second page and Control R. Did I save it? Maybe I didn't save it. Control S. Control R. It's kind of weird. Looks like it's not. Hang on a second. What did I do? Let me see. Color is. Oh, you know why? Because I think that's black anyway. But anyways, that will change those elements. Okay. Boop. So that's the internal embedded one. And then the last one is inline, which basically what it means is that you have an H1 and an H1, and then inside of it, and you have your content between, but you add another attribute called style, and then you can put in the different CSS that you want to apply to it. So you add this part here, okay? And so for now, I'm just going to have you guys do inline, although it's not really the best suggested way of doing it, just because it's the easiest to apply when you first start, and it's useful for some things. Okay, so inline CSS, what you're going to do is it's you to add CSS to a specific element. So on each element, you would just put this in here. I just said that earlier. Style color purple. That's the inline CSS rule, and that would apply. It's good because you can specifically grab an exact element and say, hey, I want that to be this color. I want that specific thing. Because right up here, if I do it at the top, that would apply to all the H1s. This one, because it's on this specific H1, will only apply there. But it's hard to debug because then you have to go through every line of your code instead of just looking at the top or looking in another sheet. You shouldn't use it generally. All right, so let's go ahead and play around with this a little bit, and then we'll kind of go from there. CSS box and text properties. Okay, so these are some of the things that you can do. So let's say we have this P element, and then I add a margin of 25, all these various things. Okay, this is what it would do. It's better just to show you. I think it doesn't look that great, but let's say this is my content. This is my P content. The margin is the space from one piece of content to another. So I'm gonna go in here and show you over here, because I think this will be a little bit easier than just explaining it with that picture, because I don't think that's helping that much. So I'm just going to keep adding on to this index here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a P element, and I'm going to put what we call dummy text. And so I'll show you the, come over here. There we go. No, don't want to, huh? It's like, just, there it goes. Okay. And I think it's lipsum.com. Is that right? Lipsum. Yeah. So it's lorem ipsum, and basically it's just dummy text. You can read this. I'm just going to tell it to make 5 paragraphs, generate lorem ipsum, and it's just gibberish. We use it as a stand-in for text. Okay. So I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it inside of this P element. All right, and I'm going to go to View, and I'm going to turn on Word Wrap. That just makes it so it doesn't just keep going off screen like that. It's a little bit, if you want, it's View and toggle Word Wrap. Otherwise, the one line will go all the way across, and that's great and all, but it makes it kind of hard to work with. And then I'm going to grab another piece of lorem ipsum. I'll just grab this one, Control C. And I'm just going to paste in here, Control V. That way I got like some stuff to work with, and then I'll save it here, and then we can I can play with it here. All right, so that just makes it a little bit easier to work with. All right, fabulous. All right, now yeah. So right now, if you were to look at this, what you're going to notice is there's basically one space between it, right? Like one line. If I wanted to put the space between this element and the elements on either side of it, this paragraph element, what I can do is I can increase its margin. So to do that, you do style. You're always going to do that. Equals. Just do equals. And I'm going to add margin. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead, and I'm just going to use pixels for everything now because it's a little bit easier to work with. And we'll say, let's do 100 px. Okay. And I'll save that. All right, and then I put a semicolon. So this is how you would write a CSS rule. Okay, so we'll just do Control S, and I'm going to go in here, and I have way too many things, and I'll just hit Control R. And then what you're going to see is it's going to add 100 pixels between it and everything around it. Okay, so notice that there's about, I'm guessing, but there's 100 pixels here, 100 pixels here, 100 pixels here, and 100 pixels here. Right? So it added all of that space around it. So you can kind of push things off. Now, let's say instead I didn't want it to go everywhere, because see how like it's indented now? You can also do, I could do margin hyphen top instead, 100 pixels. And let's say I want to do it on the bottom too. So I have the semicolon. Then I'll just do another one, margin hyphen bottom. And we'll just do 100 pixels. Okay, so now it's only going to do the top, it's only going to do the bottom. And if we go back here, Control R, and you'll see that it did it to the top, did it to the bottom, but now it's not on the left and it's not on the right. Okay, and I could also do margin left and margin hyphen right, but that's basically what margin's going to do for me. All right. I'm just going to show you the ones that you're probably going to end up using, and not the other ones. Okay. Now, another thing I might want to do is this. So if you look, see how, if you look at this text, it does text wrap, and what I mean by that is that as I expand this, see how the text will always go to the full width, right? And then it'll kind of compress and get smaller. Which is fine, but it's also kind of annoying. It doesn't look real good. It's real inconsistent in that way. So what I might want to do is actually, in the content itself, decide what I want its width and height to be. Okay? So to do that, I could just go over here, and just like we did before, I'm just going to go ahead and keep adding everything to the same style. Actually, you know what? I'll do it to the second one, just to make it different. So I'm going to go ahead and do style equals, and then we'll just do width, and I will make it, let's say, 480 pixels. And I'll also do, well, we'll just leave the width there. And we'll save that. And I'll go here. And now you'll see that it's only 480 pixels wide. Okay. And just like you can do that with this guy too, but, and I could also do the height. We could do height. Let's do 200 pixels. Okay. And you're not going to see any difference because that's already 200. Let's do 10. I just want to show you something. Notice I didn't do anything. Right now, that box is 10 pixels tall, but the problem is the content can't fit in that. So what it'll do is it'll just expand beyond it anyway. And to kind of prove my point, I didn't do this yet, but we're just going to do background color, and I'll just do aqua. Oops, put a semicolon. See, that is the size. I made it 10 pixels. Let's do a little bit more. Let's do 100 so you can see it better. So this is, I just made the background color of the content box that size, but you see the content can't fit in it, so it will just expand beyond it anyway. So it's most of the time what I would say, and I had said it earlier with this, I would just define the width and not the height so much, because it's just going to go past it anyway, unless you specifically make it a certain way. But so yeah, so you can also determine the width and the height of your content. Okay, and this also works on images, so I could do image style and do that as well. So I'll just show you style. And then we'll do width, and I'll just do 100 px. Oops, I already had the thing. Control S, Control R, and you can see it will change that size too. I know last time we just straight up wrote width, but you can actually write style width, which is actually more correct. It's generally better to do it this way and not just write width. You want to do the style instead. Okay, so you can also do the width and height of the content. And you can do some other stuff too. So I'm going to take this background color out for right now. Okay. So let's see, what else do I want to do? You can also do padding. Okay. So padding is the space. Actually, I'm going to put that back in there. Let's undo this. Background color aqua. Padding is the space between the content and let's grab this, Control X. I'm gonna put it in this one. Control space, Control V. So I got background color aqua. I'm just gonna show you that this is what it looks like. Control R. If I don't specify, it's just gonna be the size of the thing here, just for purposes. You can also decide the space between the content and the outside of it. Okay, and what I mean by that is this. So let's say on this one, I do a height, and we'll do like a rather large number, and we'll do, let's say, 500 px. Okay? And we'll do a Control R. So now, I made the height that much, okay? But, actually, you know what? I don't want to do that. Never mind. I'll do that. what I can do is do padding. So that's what I was going to show you. So now watch, if I do, hang on, Control R. So you see this is what it looks like, right? So this is basically the current size of the box that's holding this is the size of the content in it, because I didn't specify a size. So it's just going to naturally, the box that holds it is going to be whatever size the content is. Unless, like I did here, I specify the size of the box specifically. So right now, this box is this size because the content's that size. But what I can do is I can add padding to this. So we'll do padding, tin bear, and let's do 25px. What that's going to do, it's going to add space between the content and the outside of the box. Okay? It's not the same thing as margin, because the box, the container, is this blue area. That's the whole big box. I'm putting a space between that and its box. The space between the end of the box that it's contained in and the next object, that's margin. Padding is the space between the end of its content box and the actual content. It's the space in between. So, yeah, if you get it here. So margin, so like this is the container box of my object, okay? Margin is the space between this and whatever the next object is, okay? And it has its own margin in between. The space between the content and the end of its box, the containing box, that's padding, okay? That's the difference. And I already said we can do height and we can do width, so I can manually change the size of those. And another thing we can do is border and outline. So I'll show you that now too. So I'll just put on this one. So basically what you can do is you can do border. Don't bother outline. Border and outline are kind of like the same thing. One's like just outside of the box and one's like the inside of the box. Just do border. Don't worry about doing the other one. So we're going to do border, hyphen, and we'll do style. And then these are the different options. We can do a dotted line, a dashed, dotted, double groove. There's a bunch of them. I usually just do solid. So I'm just going to do solid. Then we can do border, hyphen, color. And we'll do blue, violet. And then we can also do border, hyphen, width. And then, I don't know, I'll do, let's say, 3 pixels. Okay. So first I have to determine the type of border style I want. So whether it's going to be dashed lines or, you know, whatever it's going to look like. I want to have a color of it because otherwise I think it'll be black by default. And then I have to decide how thick I want that border to be. So I'll just go ahead and save that. Go here, Control R, and then you'll see it creates a border that's like a blue violet. It looks like purple to me. That looks like this. And notice again, it's getting cut off. And the reason why is because if you look at here, I had earlier specified that the height was this. But watch, if I take this out, Control S, Control R, it'll be the width, it'll be the height of the content, right? But if you specify what it is, it will be that size. So just be aware of that. All right, so I can add a border around it, and there's a bunch of different options with that as well. Okay, and there's ways of writing it that's a little bit different too. Okay, all right. Now, so that is the basics of the box model. So we can add, just to sum it up again, we can add a margin. So that's the space between the content box, the box that contains the content, and the next piece of content. So if I added a margin onto this guy as well, it would even increase it more. So that's the space in between. We can add padding, which is the space between the content and the outside of its content box, which would be this space in here. Okay. We can add we can add a border to the outside of that content box. So actually, I'll show you on this one. I'm just going to copy and paste this part here. Oh, we don't need the quote. So this to control, oops, a little bit farther. Control C. I'm just going to put it in here so you can see what I'm saying. Control V, Control S, and Control R. And I didn't do it right apparently. Blue, violet, border with. Oh, I did do border, hyphen, style. Missed a piece. Let's try that now. There you go. The border, which is basically the outline of the content box, can also be adjusted. And let me see what else was there. Yeah, and then we can also determine the width and the height. So you can see here I did the width. I took the height off because it wasn't as large as the thing. And yeah, so that's the lump sum of the basic box options. Let's go here. The basic box options. So you can see, and you can look at these as an examples too. It might even be worth it to kind of look at it, maybe review it here, and it might be easier for you to understand. Because you can also, if you wanted, you could do border width, and you can determine, you know, border top width and border bottom width and things like that. So if you don't want it all to be one size, you can actually make it specific. Padding margin. I'm not going to worry about outline because I don't use it. Okay, so the next video I'm just going to do is going to be about text. And then I think that'll be it, right? Yeah, text. Okay. Alrighty.